Are you someone who does a lot of personal growth? Are you someone that really feels like, hey, I've spiritually awoken to a point, but still you find yourself ruminating, can't get yourself out of it? How do you break free from this? So it allows us in ceremonies to have people stillness, finally in quiet, and be able to observe what's really been going on in their life. We aren't living our life because we are actually the life force energy that is bringing the animation to everything around us. I think this is going to be so powerful for people that are already on the journey.
Rumination. We all ruminate. Rumination is the mind replaying the same thought, memory, or scenario on a loop. Like you had a bad conversation with somebody and you keep replaying in your head. That's rumination. Not to solve anything new, but stuck in the repetition. It's about the remember past and the imagined future. Those of us who want to be present can't ruminate because that takes us out of presence. So there's no solution, no relief, just suffering.
So are you someone who does a lot of personal growth? Are you someone that really feels like, hey, I've spiritually awoken to a point. I understand emotionally, mentally, maybe even spiritually what's really going on, but still you find yourself ruminating, thinking about the same conversations over and over again, and you can't get yourself out of it. How do you break free from this, Mark?
Well, by the end of this video, you're going to know rumination, where it came from, where it's trying to take you, and why it's not working. But more importantly, we're going to give you a way to break out of the loop. So, welcome to Mastering Thought. I'm Dr. Mark Waller. I've been a marriage family therapist for nearly 30 years, and this is Rochelle Lane, who is the founder of HoldingCeremoniespace.com, where ancient earth-based healing modalities and heart-opening ceremonies converge. And it's about time we understood that there was some ancient wisdom around, and it's time for some of it to resurface. So, welcome, Rochelle.
Thank you, Mark. I'm so excited about this subject because I think it directly applies to me and overcoming this part of me that when I'm not aware, this rumination can take over. So what exactly is, rumination?
So rumination is just, the same thoughts circling back over and over. And it make more sense probably if I said where it came from to begin with.
Okay.
And how rumination became what it is. So, and a lot of people don't know this. This is brand new information. Unless you've studied this, you're not going to know this information. So when a child is about 2 or 3 years of age, they start learning language, right? Mm-hmm. You're a mother. You probably know this as well as I do.
Yes.
So now, at that time, they display two distinctive types of communication. One is just normal communication. Hi, mommy, how are you? I'm going to play with my teddy bear, whatever. The second has been labeled by developmentalists, specifically Piaget, as egocentric speech. Okay, what's egocentric speech? Egocentric speech is the child talking out loud to themselves about themselves with no intention that anybody is listening or is going to respond. Mm-hmm. And it's a phase that children go through. And so now they've studied egocentric speech extensively, and what they discovered was the more stress the child is under, the more egocentric speech they display. Now, when I say that, what does that indicate to you right away about the whole topic today?
Wow, it sounds like it has to do with our survival and staying alive and taking care of ourselves.
So the first thing we find out is children use language to make themselves feel better, which is absolutely survival. They're trying to survive bad feelings. Yeah. And so what they do is they talk out loud to themselves about what they're doing and what they're experiencing in an effort to try to make themselves feel better. That is the purpose of egocentric speech.
Got it.
So if you're listening to this, you probably have an idea of where this is going. And so now what happens is there were two people very famously who studied this. One was Vygotsky. Vygotsky was the father of Russian psychology, and Piaget, who was a Swedish developmentalist who talked about this. Now, at some point, they disagree on, and I'm going to take Vygotsky's position. So around 5 or 6 or 7 years of age, egocentric speech disappears. Piaget would say that it disappears because we just outgrow it. Vygotsky postulated, and he was correct, that egocentric speech goes inside and becomes private speech or internal speech.
Wow.
In other words, it becomes the voice in your head that sounds like you talking to you. And so now what we do, once that voice goes inside, is we use our internal dialogue to make ourselves feel better. In other words, we use it for self-soothing.
Yes.
And you probably have noticed this. If you had a tough conversation with somebody, you replay it, you ruminate about it. And then the purpose of the rumination is to eventually rationalize the fact that what you did wasn't so bad and that you can feel better about yourself.
Yes. Or to think what I could have said differently, or what they said, the points that were wrong. And
Right,
yeah,
right.
just justifying more my stance, my point of view.
Exactly. And so since the voice sounds like us, we believe it's us. And that's the birth of rumination. So initially, the child is talking to themselves about themselves to try to make themselves feel better. And because nobody comes along and says, oh, honey, that voice is not you, what happens is it develops a life of its own. And so we spend the rest of our lives talking to ourselves, trying to make ourselves feel better.
Wow.
Okay, so getting back to your question, what is rumination? Does that describe what rumination is?
Sounds like it. I mean, it sounds like it's similar to what is called the default mode network, which I know we've talked about before, and it's brought up a lot in the plant medicine community because it was just discovered only, I think, in the last 10 plus years, 15 years.
Correct.
And they found that was that part that we identify with ourselves that keeps looping, that's always talking.
Right.
And they found that when people do classical psychedelics, that actually can completely shut off,
Right.
or at least it comes to a really, really slow whisper. So you start to be able to receive things outside of our constant chattering and talking. And people have major breakthroughs. They
Right.
start to hear this wisdom that they think is like, oh, the divine, right? They tap into something beyond their chatter. So yeah, I'm very familiar with the default mode network and how it
So
works. And Sarah,
what you said is very profound because the default mode network, by the way, is a network in the brain, and it's basically the storyteller, and it tells a story called me. Now, what Rochelle is referring to is, psychedelics turn off the default mode network, and not only can we define it as the default mode network, but it's the ego and the sense of self just disappears. Okay, so when the ego disappears, that ego dissolution creates this spiritual experience of who we really are.
Yes.
And that is where the big breakthroughs are coming from with people with PTSD and addiction disorders and things like that, because they're realizing that the problems they're experiencing are a function of this internal voice and all the whole ego complex that goes with it. And, in your work, Rochelle, you're leveraging that. How do you leverage that?
Completely. So it allows us, or in ceremonies, to have people stillness, finally in quiet, and be able to observe what's really been going on in their life, even to the point that they might visit something in the past that has happened to them, but it's from a completely different point of view. It's not with the narrative. It's not with the constant chatter. It's with more love. It's with more compassion. It's with kindness. And so this also happens, Mark, a lot when we are in the medicine ceremony. We listen to music. In fact, this last weekend, we listened to some classical music, Mozart, just some beautiful concerto, and everyone was just in awe. Not a body was moving. It was just pure love and bliss. And then as everyone starts to come back out of the state, they're like, I felt who I really was. I am something beyond this identification of ego. And so using that is the catalyst for changing who we are being in the world and taking new steps. So it's been an amazing journey with plant medicine to understand the default mode network and what happens.
And by the way, that's one path. The path we use on this channel is called moment mindfulness, with which also turns off the default mode network. Meditation turns off the default mode network temporarily. So turning off the default mode network and the internal dialogue is absolutely critical to spiritual, psychological, and emotional awakening. And that's what we're all about here. So one of the things that makes this hard is the default mode network is the brain's default state. And when the mind is at rest, it is telling the ego story, which is all motivated by survival. But here's the real kicker. Not only is it the voice in your head, the narrator, the storyteller, but it brings with it a sense of self. It literally creates a sense of self that goes with it, and it is the false self. And I just want to share this. Before we started recording, Rochelle and I were talking about some people people she was working with. And of course, I struggle with this all day long working with people. People do not want to believe that that voice is not who they are. They're so attached to it. It's their shiny little object, and they don't want anybody to take their little teddy bear away from them.
Or they believe that it's serving me in some higher reason, and there's a reason why it's there for my benefit.
That's
But
right.
it's just because it becomes so attached to it that they don't even know anything otherwise.
So now here's another thing that fits into this whole thing is the activity like focusing and concentrating, listening to music, in addition to moment mindfulness and plant medicine, turn off the default mode network and the voice goes away. Why is this important? Because there's a lot of people listening to this, I'm sure, who are watching TV at night trying to fall asleep. They're listening to a podcast trying to fall asleep. They're spending, I have people tell me all day long they're trying to distract themselves. Why are they trying to distract themselves? Well, there's a network in the front of the brain here called the task positive network. So when you're doing a task like riding a bike or focusing on a TV show or, reading a book, whatever task you're doing, that network is negatively correlated with the voice in your head. So when you're focused, the activity from the default mode network is dramatically reduced and the voice in your head goes away. And that's why people are doing all these distracting things to try to bring some peace into their life to get rid of the rumination. And so that happens in the dorsal lateral prefrontal cortex, not to go into the brain weeds here, but that literally turns off the voice. And there are many people, I'm sure you encounter this, Rochelle, that are, have elaborate activities in their lives to try to get the voice to shut up.
Yes.
So now, what's the linchpin of rumination? The linchpin of rumination is we do so much for so long, for so many years, that eventually we believe that voice is me. In other words, we create a me in the head that's talking all the time, and we don't question its legitimacy because it feels like me. And before we were starting, you were asking some questions about that, and I wanted to go back because they were very much on point. Can you remember one or two of those questions you were talking about?
Yeah. So, well, you already answered the one about how it relates to our identity,
Yeah.
like why we're so attached to it. But I also wanted to ask, what is a practical step? Like, let's say a listener right now is watching this interview at 2 o'clock in the morning, and they're like, okay, what do I do now? What's the first positive step that someone can take right now?
So the whole philosophy in this channel is to become the observer of your own mental activity. And so the first positive step you can take, I know this probably sounds too simple to be of any use to anybody, but the first positive step you can take is take a step back and just observe your own mental activity and realize that there is a voice, telling a story and narrating your life instead of allowing you to live your life. In other words, I know I've told this story before. I don't know if I've told it to you, Rochelle, but let's say you and I went to the top of the mountain. And when we got to the top of the mountain, there's this gigantic red tree. And you've never seen anything like this before. You're just awestruck. I mean, it's hundreds of feet in the air and you're just looking at it. Meanwhile, I'm standing next to you listening to my head say sequoia. So you're experiencing a tree. I'm experiencing words in my head. And so the problem with rumination is we end up not living life, we're thinking life. We're lost in a world of mental abstraction, talking to ourselves all the time and feeling lousy about what we're saying in our heads.
Okay, that right there, I think we need to repeat that because I see that so much in my work. We aren't living our life because we are actually the life force energy that is bringing the animation to everything around us. And if we're in our heads thinking about everything, there is no life force. Like we just become, we become the, we get pulled by life, right? Things just can move us about. We're not even aware. We're not,
No,
wow,
we're not
that's really, really powerful.
We're not present. We're on autopilot. And,
Yes.
So the problem is that when we're thinking life, we're subject to our childhood programming and we're thinking about and reacting to and perceiving life through the lens we developed as children. And this happens in a part of the brain called the limbic system. But, the problem is we're not responding to reality, what's in front of us. And so, and we're miserable as a result of it. And this is the problem with rumination, because rumination keeps us trapped in the world we grew up in as children without realizing that we've already grown up and we don't have to respond to life that anymore. But getting back, what is the thing that you can do? The thing you can do is start experiencing yourself as the observer of all this. Instead of the participant, the the observer. So in psychology, we call this metacognition, which means we're stepping to a meta level above what's going on, and we're watching the narrator. And that separation from the narration is the secret sauce. Because eventually what that does is it breaks the cycle of identification with the voice and with the story. Because you are not the story.
Cool. So what is moment mindfulness? Explain, Mark.
Well, moment mindfulness, I'll just put it up on the screen here, is an exercise that, we've developed to do exactly what I just said, disidentify from the voice in your head. So you sit with your eyes open, and that's important because we want you to be able to do this in your normal walk of life. So you don't have to set aside time, close your eyes in prayer, meditation. You're driving down the road and you just notice the next everyday thought. Okay, well, what's an everyday thought? An everyday thought is, I need to get my hair done on Saturday. And when I tell people this, their ego just screams at them that this is too simple to work. Oh, and that brings me to the other question you asked me about why we don't do it on negative thoughts, but we'll get to that in a second. So what you do is you wait for the next ordinary everyday thought. You step back and just notice that you're thinking. Okay, what does that do? That gets you out of the system of thought, and now you're the observer of the rumination, not the ruminator. And as soon as you step back and observe, those networks in your brain switch, and you notice that the voice in your head stops. That's the end. That is the end of the exercise. Now, people say, well, what's next? Well, there is no what's next. What you've done is you've just programmed your brain.
Yeah.
And trust me, your brain knows what to do with the programming. I will link a video or two to the end of this. So if you want to delve into moment mindfulness and learn more about it, you can. And when it appears, please click on it and watch it, because this is worth doing. If you do it cleanly without analyzing too much, you will not start noticing changes in days, not weeks or months. Days.
It's true, Mark. So, when I found your channel almost 3 months ago, I was like, oh, this is so simple. I can do it. And like I said, I had and I've said this before, but an immediate, just this crazy feeling of like, oh, it just disappears. It completely disappeared. And I was fully in the present moment. And thoughts came back up. But I realized in that moment that those were automatically running and I wasn't even aware of it. And later, like afterward, I just noticed this spaciousness, this presence. And now I am acutely aware when that voice is going on. So if I do happen to get sucked into something, I'm like, oh, that's a voice in my head. And I immediately take myself to the present moment. So it does work, and do not be fooled by its simplicity. I will say this. I practice this now with all my clients, all my coaching clients. And for some of them, it's a little too oversimplified, so they don't get the importance of it. But once they start to practice it, every single one has some sort of mini awakening or mini realization of what really is going on with this ego and the voice in their head.
So you had asked before we started recording one of the best questions people ask, and that is why we do this on simple thoughts and not negative thoughts. The reason we don't do it on the negative, gnarly, emotional thoughts is because once you're having a negative thought or an emotional thought, fight or flight has been triggered, and the entire brain is flooded with survival, and it's almost impossible to separate from those thoughts. And the separation is the key. It's not defeating negative thoughts that's the key. It's the disidentification with any thought that's the key. Yeah. And so that's why we do it on non-emotional thoughts. Once the disidentification takes place, and you know it when it happens, you immediately know it, just as you just described. Once that happens, the disidentification applies to the negative thoughts and the small thoughts all at the same time. So you don't have to graduate then to work on the harder thoughts. It completely changes your relationship to all thoughts.
Yeah.
So now
and it's not as charged, like you said. You can't have that emotional charge. You'll get trapped in that. So that makes sense.
If you don't believe the thoughts, are you, there is no, temptation for an emotional charge anymore, because it's false. Yeah. One of the first things you realize is 90% of the thoughts you're having are false anyway. They're not true. Rochelle didn't respond to my text, so she doesn't love me anymore. Okay, well, that's not true.
Yeah. So what do you think about, so I have clients that they just believe if they can just think about it one more time, or if they can just they'll find some sort of peace in the overthinking or in the solving of it in their mind, because it feels I think some people think that it's actually productive. I know that though it's just creating more suffering.
Right.
So what do I tell them? Like, oh, if I just do it again, like I know that I can outthink myself.
Well, you can't solve the problem of thinking with more thinking. And the ego
Yes.
wants to do this the way it wants to do it.
Yes.
So if you and I come along and say, no, do it this way, here's a very simple
Yeah.
exercise.
Yeah.
Their ego is going to say, no, I'm a complicated person. And, oh yeah, that reminds me of some teaching I had 15 years ago. And I tried that and it didn't work. I've been taking some, plant medicine and that'll do it. And, or maybe, I need more vitamins. I hear that, I need to take some
Yeah.
natural vitamins. It's just constant rationalization.
Yes.
You just
Yeah.
spent $2,000 to come to the workshop, and now you're going to refuse to do what the person says works. Well, okay, that's the ego. That's what we do. Matter of fact, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, say it.
Well, it's not unusual for me to go through this whole process that we just did on this recording, and the person will respond to me and say, "Well, is there anything else I can do?"
That's my favorite. That's my favorite.
What else can I do? I don't know. Go to a nicer therapist. Go find somebody who tells you what you want to hear.
And then you say, wake up. You're
Yeah.
asleep. I'm telling you you're asleep, and you're asking me what else is there to do. The only thing to do
Right.
is to wake up. So really, truly, it's just this old identity that keeps trying to tell us, hey, remember what happened. Remember who hurt you. Remember you're
Right.
not safe. But it's just another, way to get us stuck back in the loop. So yeah, it's really observing that ego at work. And when you disidentify from it, then it has no charge. You can't be trapped anymore. I love this, Mark. Love it.
Now, there's one more point I want to make about this, and
Okay.
and that is in the description below. You're going to see two quizzes. One is the Lion Unicorn quiz, and one is the Explorer Analyzer quiz. Now, why am I directing you to that? Because my theory is that analyzers and lions and unicorns have different types of rumination. And that might be something we want to do at a future time. But what I'm asking you to do is take those quizzes, find out if you're a lion or a unicorn, and then take the other one and find out if you're an explorer or an analyzer. And then what I'd like you to do in the comments is let us know how that turned out and what that informed you about the kind of ruminations you experience in your head. I'd be absolutely fascinated to find out, whether lions and unicorns or explorers and analyzers have different, kind of thought patterns. I think that would be fascinating to find out.
Very, very true. So I want to mention one more thing, because I believe that so much of healing, it's not defeating the thought, but really everything you're saying is just witnessing it.
Yes.
And the moment that you can see there is this thought again, then you're not possessed by it anymore.
Right.
And I do that a lot in ceremony through our meditations. Is as the thoughts come up, if people are still at the space where they haven't completely turned on the default mode network, we go through this process of where they're witnessing the thought and just observing it. And really what happens every single time is the thought disappears.
Right.
It no longer is attached to you, no matter what the thought. So yeah, I love this simplicity of what we're asking people to do, not to fight it, not to go in on it, but literally just observe and witness it.
Right. I have a friend down the road who's an amazing woman who we'll have on the channel. She's writing a book right now called Just Notice.
Ooh, I like that title.
Yeah, her name's Janny. She's an amazing person. Anyway, the problem is ruminations sound exactly like you, the same tone and timbre, feels like it's been there forever. So we assume it's ourselves. And when we do that, we give it authority over our decisions and our relationships and our sense of reality. But it isn't you. It's a survival mechanism formed in childhood, running on autopilot, maintaining a fictional story of me, not for truth, but for survival. And the moment you identify with it, it runs your life, and it does until you see it for what it is, only a thought. And so if you're interested in learning more about Rochelle, her information will be in the description below. Check her out. You won't be sorry. And if what you've heard today resonates and you want to go deeper, I work with people one-on-one. The first step is a discovery call. There's a link below. No pressure. pressure, no pitch. We talk, I listen, we figure out together whether it's right fit or not. And again, it's in the description. If you're not ready, what you really need to do though is 6:15 on Thursday evenings, sometimes on Friday evenings at 6:15 if I have a conflict. We do a live stream every week with real questions and real people actually doing the real work in front of you. And you'll see this practice in action. So come and watch that 6:15 on Thursdays. Come and ask, subscribe and click the bell icon and you'll get notified to double check on that. And there's also a free Facebook group where this conversation continues every day, and that link is below. Anything else, Rochelle?
I think this is going to be so powerful for people that are already on the journey, because like myself, when I first learned about this, I thought, well, I'm doing pretty good. I understand. I spiritually am aware, but this is a jump in timeline. This is really something that can completely align you in a way that you've never done before. And again, thank you, Mark, for broaching this subject and for your channel. And the same with Mark, if you'd like to discuss any of this with me, any type of coaching, or are interested in ceremony or just having a discovery call about plant medicine, I would love to connect with you. So thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe on our channel. Thank you. Bye.